All to the Town of Eastham Water Management Committee for the month of July. It's the 12th of July of 2016 and 2 p.m. And we have the agendas in front. I think this might be a little shorter meeting than we'd normally have because we've actually dealt with a number of tasks. Jane, would you want to start and
Sure.
tell us what's happening?
The highlight, I would say, of the month was the Cape Summit, where the Cape Cod Commission co-hosted with the EPA and others a forum to discuss current water quality, wastewater planning activities throughout the Cape. And to that regard, I will pass out with you sort of a summary or an update that was given to the Board of Selectmen regarding where we are in the process. We were able to be on time with submission of 5 watershed reports. We are a designated WMA, or Waste Management Agency, and as such, that was our responsibility to define collection scenarios and hybrid scenarios. And most of the context of these reports is very technical information. And if we had not done this on our own behalf, the Cape Cod Commission would have prepared a report for us, but we were able to comply that and work with our consultants, and I think it's definitely in our best interest to do our own planning and strategies for the future. So at this point, we are working on 2 hybrid reports for Nauset Estuary, and those will detail traditional options, which include sewering, and non-traditional approaches, which some of which we've actually even started to define in terms of activities supported by the Cape Cod Commission. Within the next 12 months, we'll be working towards submission and preparing an implementation report. So again, a lot of activity focused on wastewater planning, and I'm happy to report that some of the activities that were funded in support of the 208 regional planning effort were conducted in the Salt Pond area. So we have had the benefit of having AECOM, an engineering consulting firm, working under the direction of the Cape Cod Commission, do a couple of projects for us. One includes creating a design for a gravel wetland stormwater treatment system. I actually haven't even reviewed the plan, so as soon as I'm finished here, I'm going to go up and start looking at that plan. That would benefit not only support of the conceptual stormwater system itself, but work on nutrient reduction. So that's a huge benefit to the Salt Pond water body itself. So that is one activity that's taken place, and the report has been prepared and the plans have been finished.
Jane, that's what you talked about last time, is the bioremediation approach?
Correct. It's a gravel wetland stormwater treatment system. The second activity that was conducted by AECOM this month was installation of 2 monitoring wells and testing of 3 monitoring wells, one of which was part of our landfill environmental investigation. It was a tri-level monitoring well, so there are 3 different levels in the aquifer can be tested. So those 3 monitoring wells will be used as part of an initial site characterization for that Salt Pond location for a permeable reactive barrier. So the monitoring wells were installed, and additionally, the monitoring the town had installed, were tested. I don't have the results back of the water quality from those tests that were done. But the report and water quality testing, again, was all paid for under this 208 grant that we received. And the third activity that I think will have long-term benefits to the Nauset Estuary is the swing in testing, monitoring in conjunction with not only the town of Orleans, but with the Cape Cod National Seashore. And on those other two projects that I just detailed, they are in full support and have been partnering with us in those works as well. So the monitoring of the Nauset Estuary, the first set of samples have been taken. We were new in the planning state process. Orleans has been doing this for many years. So we benefited from training that was provided graciously by the Pleasant Bay Alliance, and Bob Duncanson in particular came and hosted novice trainings for those of us who are new samplers, and also conducted refresher training. Carolyn Kennedy and I followed those first trainings with just a focused group for our Eastham samplers, where we distributed the equipment, again, went over testing protocols, and sort of put our teams together and signed various sampling locations. So to all of those who are involved and those who are backup people for me in this project, I thank you. I think we're off to a good start. I think that everybody, well, first of all, it was a picture-perfect day, so, okay, that's a great way to start. Everyone had a smile on their face, and again, wastewater planning is going to take us many years and a lot of hard work. So I think the more people we have involved and understanding all of the aspects of how we make a determination about water quality and what we do with those results in a cooperative manner is really a win for the town, and I am very happy and very enthusiastic to participate. So that is pretty much, I think, everything on the wastewater side, and I'm happy to report about a couple other things. I was actually interviewed by the Boston Globe magazine, and I think that article is due to come out in a little bit, so hopefully it's positive, and you never know. So we'll see what how that works out. And also, we had put on our to-do list contacting our environmental consultant that we had hired to do the alum treatments for Great Pond and Herring Pond. And that company actually has been acquired by a larger company, and their name is now Solitude. So they were originally ACT, Aquatic Control Technology. Then they were converted to another company, and now they're on they're a national company now. So I have actually talked with the business office, and I am planning to do a site visit with staff on Friday to look at Schoolhouse Minister's Pond and to try to get some type of evaluation on what they think might be viable options, and I will get back to you after a meeting with them, and then I want to make sure that I run this through our limnologist, Liz Moran, for her input. So, hopefully they'll have something that they can suggest that we can do to improve that water body. So that's been a high priority, and we'll see. So finally, we're moving forward on that. In terms of the landfill investigation,
This will also include like a plant survey to determine whether they're...
I'm not sure if we're at that point yet.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna ask them, since they're in the business of remediation, to give us, you know, what they think is on a practical,
Okay.
doable level, what is possible. I have invited Shayna from Conservation Commission to attend the site inspection. I haven't heard back from her whether she is available. I will follow up with her, because that's critical, and that will, I think that makes more sense than if it dictates plant removal, then I'm sure that you're absolutely right, Adele, that's, you know, I'm sure there's a whole host of things that we'd be required to do.
Okay.
But I just figure we might as well, from the experts, have them take a look when it's in full growth. We didn't want to do it obviously in the winter or when it wasn't warm. So, the landfill, we, again, Environmental Partners and Environmental Strategies and Management, who's the landfill consultant, have been collaborating. The Board of Selectmen are due to discuss some water policy issues next week. So, a lot of what's been discussed so far is not adopted into policy. So some of the requirements that the town needs, it has an obligation to meet under the immediate response action plan related to the release from the landfill and that had impacted residential wells, has to be part of that policy. And so those discussions are underway. And I think that's it. And on terms of our health department activities related to water, we sent out pumping reminder slips, so some of you might be getting those in mail. It's non-regulatory. It's a reminder for people that if they have not pumped in 3 or more years, we send out a card, just, you know, to raise your awareness. I know that there's been a little, obviously there's issues now. Tri-Town is no longer accepting septage, and that the haulers have to go further. So I would suggest if you are one of those individuals that need your septic tank pumped and you have a desire to do so, you might want to call sooner rather than later to your service provider so that you can give him a little leeway. And I know we health agents, area health agents, had met with the haulers, trying to, you know, discuss their frustrations and concerns. And, you know, I know that some of the businesses had suggested, gee, maybe if people would pump, you know, not during the peak season, or they pumped earlier, there might be incentives. I don't know, but it's something that you might want to think about, that these guys might actually take more time to do their job these days because they have to travel to either Yarmouth or off Cape to dispose of the septic waste. So there's additional trucking involved. And the other activity that the health department just conducted was the annual free nitrate testing notification. Again, we're doing 1/3 of the town, and we will have wells for many, many years to come. So again, it's really important that people continue to test their private drinking water wells. And this is just nitrate nitrogen. It's not a full-blown test, but again, it's very important to continue that testing program, I think. And I guess the one and final last thing that we've done today, actually, is submission of year 13 of our NEPDES permit. And so that's sort of, I think, my update.
What is a NEPDES permit?
NEPDES is a National Elimination Discharge, I can never get this right.
Elimination system?
A National Elimination Discharge Pollution. NEDPES. Systems is the last word. It's your stormwater plan.
Okay.
Because we are actually classified as an urban community, believe it or not. We trigger the threshold for requirement under municipal systems to submit this report annually. So we've just submitted it.
This is an EPA plan?
Correct.
The technical memorandums 3 and 4 that are to be submitted in this upcoming year for the implementation report, who prepares those technical memorandums?
We have a consultant, GHD. They used to be Stearns and Wheeler. They are consultants. They also attended the 208. I don't know if you met them.
I think I did.
Jeff Gregg is the principal, and Jessica Janney is the environmental scientist.
Thank you.
All right, Jane,
Thank you.
on a couple of those topics I wanted to loop back on, but at the next point, I wanted to introduce a new member. We have Jeff Bumby, B-U-M-B-Y, and Jeff has joined us. I asked him to join, and he graciously said he would. Jeff, do you want to give us a little of your background so we kind of know more about you?
Sure. I've been coming to the Cape for probably 15 years, on and off, dating a woman that I married last summer, who lives here permanently. I moved from Wisconsin in December permanently. My background is in manufacturing, biscuits, plastics, electronics, in the production area, everything but accounting and sales. I served on a lot of local committees, always involved in something. I was a councilman for 2 terms, president of the Historical Society, Hospital Board, Public Works, Finance and Government Affairs, things like that. And rather than not continue on those sort of activities, I volunteered to serve in some capacity here, wherever they need some help. I mean, I've always been involved in local committees, and I feel good about being a part of this. So I'm happy to be here, and hopefully I can contribute. I need to, I know nothing about water other than swim in it or drink it, and Janet Sisterton, I can't say her name.
Sister
Sister Son
Yeah.
gave me all of her records, and so,
Oh.
you know, I've been plowing through that, and that's been an education. I also have to learn the culture of this community and area. It's different than what I come from, and so hopefully I'll be able to contribute in time.
Well, thank you and welcome.
Yeah.
I didn't catch your name. You walked in later?
I'm Scott Lewis.
Scott?
I've only been on the committee for a little over a year myself, so
Uh-huh.
and you know, so
Everyone else, and your first
Jane
name is Jane?
Crowley.
Jane Crowley. And your role is?
I'm the health agent.
So the town staff liaison, I guess we would call you. Yeah, yeah, Jeff, we did a major turnover on the committee about a year or more ago. Some long-term members retired, so we're kind of establishing ourselves again. And Jim, I guess you're within the last year of joining.
Yeah,
Scott?
well, under, yeah.
Yeah, Scott's a little more than that.
1 month, year and a month.
Yeah, but I say it's exciting times to be on the water committee in this particular town. A lot of interesting things going on. So let me see what we could, I did want to call people's attention to the fact that the Environmental Partners, Mark White, and I guess the gentleman's first name is Ryan. I'm not too sure exactly how you pronounce his second name, but those are the 2 professional engineers managing the installation of the water system here in town. They work for Environmental Partners. They did brief the selectmen on the 5th of July on the status. They brief the selectmen once a month. And if you want to catch up on all of those details, the video would be on the town website, so you could do that. Just kind of, I was gonna pick out some highlights and just mention them to you. They are, they think they'll be working on the well fields in further development in mid-August. And that is kind of consistent in time with the fact that they think they will be putting water in the tank in late July, early August. And the Board of Selectmen did ask them where water would be in the pipes first, and they said Route 6 and the library. So that's their focus. And it's my understanding that having water service to the library is important in order to be able to open it, because we need to be able to protect the building. I guess they have some contingency plan, but Environmental Partners is marching on the library. They said that over the next month or so, they will be going into the training programs for the plumbers and contractors who would be doing the installation work. The way they describe the work is that they have curb stop. The curb stop, they have the pipe in the street, they have a tap on the pipe where you connect to let the water out, and then there's a line that runs to what they define as the curb stop. And the curb stop is the place in the ground where there's a turn on and turn off device. And from that point, it's the homeowner's responsibility for the line that goes into the house. And so they're going through the process of providing training to the local commercial plumbers and contractors such that they know the way to do it. And the Environmental Partners will have a list of those who have taken the training, and they're using the term approved. But they didn't define it in complete detail. Basically, but these will be the professionals who do that kind of work, but have had specific training to our particular water service. And let's see, they say that they had sent out as many as 700 letters to the owners of property in the landfill area explaining what would be coming. The letters went out in May and June. And they did make a distinction that there are different kinds of addresses in which to send a particular notice. And apparently the town has records of where the tax bill is supposed to be sent. But then the town has other information, as perhaps, in fact, the building is actually occupied there. So it's different ways of understanding those things, but they essentially are starting that process. Let's see, I guess that's pretty well. Yeah, one of the things that I did catch that kind of caught my ear as a practical type person, apparently there may be some contractors who can do what they call that direct drilling. In other words, they don't have to open up a trench, but they can just drill a line at least part way from the street to the house, and to put in the pipe. And that, that's a little bit more involved work, but it's also perhaps less expensive. So that is going to be involved in some situations where it can be. The meter company is actually going to apparently be here and teach, the things about those meters, any peculiarities that it might have. So anyways, that just kind of gives you some idea about where we are on those details.
I may not have come up on Monday, but a couple of other things. I mean, obviously, some of us, including me, are going to have the drilling, because we're going to have to mold to get under not sidewalks, but walkways and things like that. So you will have to do molding for that. And some of us, including me, are also going to have a meter pit. Instead of the meter being in the house, it's going to be at a pit out by where the connection is, because your meter either has to be in a heated space or it has to be 4 feet below ground. And I have neither. because our house is built, you know, it's walkout in the back. So, and we have a little room where the water comes in now to a thing that accelerates the pumping. I don't know what it's called. It's there, we got it. But anyway, that room is not heated, and it's also not underground. So, so there'll be two types of meters that will be getting installed. So, I also, I just put up on the I'd get rid of this hot thing if I could quickly remember how to do it on this. This is, I think we've mentioned this a couple of times. You can get to this either by going to the town's webpage, and in the upper right-hand corner, I already did that, so you're already there. If you'll see something called, I think it's called municipal, well, I can go back, I guess, and see what it says. Yeah, water project information, new water project webpage. Click on that. It'll take you to this, which has, as you can see, all sorts of information, including maps of, you know, the various contracts and that sort of stuff. The maps, I will say, are not 100% up to date, but I think for all practical purposes, they're what most people need. I know that, for example, we're involved in the Route 6 project, and we're actually, we have now water mains because of the project. They made a little change in the way it runs, and that may not be in the map. So it's just little things like that, but the maps in general are very accurate, and obviously as soon as they move forward more with the next phase, which was authorized in the last town meeting, which they're already working on, they'll have maps of those phases too. So there will be another. They're sticking, I think, not necessarily sticking in terms of the maps, but sticking with the idea of 5 phases over a 2-year period. So originally it was 6. We're in 1 now. So, and then there may be some design over what these things look like in 2014, but still they'll be generally the same. And there's all sorts of other information if you're interested in it. And down here, and I've mentioned this before, click here for the latest news. All you got to do is put your email address in that box that says subscribe to our mailing list, and you will get weekly updates that will tell you just what's going on with the water project, where it is, where it's going to be in the following week or so. And I just think it's a wonderful source of information. Is that close enough? A wonderful source of information who want to know what's happening generally, and also, like, I know some people who, you know, they're in this go-around and they want to keep track of when it's going to come near them and that sort of thing, and this is a way to do that, to keep up with it all. And it's a very well put together, well designed, and very informative website. So I highly recommend it. Anybody who wants to sort of keep up to date as to what's happening. And you get to see pictures if you want to see pictures. There's a very short video, what do you call it, condensed video on here of the raising of the tank, the water tank. They took the whole, however long it took to do it, and boiled the whole thing down into, I think, 2 minutes or something like that. So if you're interested in trick photography, that's on here too. So
let me see, you know, Adele, you did remind me, they said that they would not do any work on putting the pipeline over Bridge Road, over Boat Meadow Creek that comes down there until after Labor Day.
okay, I wondered about that because originally they had sent out stuff a few weeks ago that indicated they would be moving on to Bridge Road. And yet there's nothing going on there, as I have found out because I avoided it for a while, thinking I'd get caught. And then the other day, traffic on 6 was bad, so I went that way. There's nothing there. So now I know I'm safe until after Labor Day.
Yeah, no, yeah, well, what I was saying is specifically, they won't be putting the pipe over the bridge. When they do, it will be over on the ocean side, and apparently it'll be above the existing utility cables that are there. And they said that they would put a 2 inches of insulation on the pipe, and that would be adequate for it to be up and exposed in cold weather, so.
Going to be on the ocean side? Because
That's,
the Herringbrook Road pipe is on the other side, it's on the bay side.
well, okay.
It's interesting.
Let me take that back then. They said, the way I understood it, was the same side as the existing cables and above them. I thought,
I don't know where the cables are, but I know.
Maybe the water side, not the ocean side.
Yeah.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
The way to know
Which
for
would be the
sure is
bay.
to go to the bridge and look and see which side the cables are on. But, you know, that's their plan for there, and they're just gonna hold off until the season passes a little bit. One more detail. All right, let me see, Jane, I could add a little bit to your comment on the One Cape Summit, because I attended, Mike was there, Adele, I guess, yeah, you were there as well. I would describe it as a high-level conference. Basically, the New England region EPA director spoke. The conservation law had a speaker, and that's one of the parties that had brought the original lawsuit against EPA. And there was also a speaker from the Buzzards Bay Coalition, and that was the other environmental group that had brought the original lawsuit.
And from DEP. On that panel that had Conservation Law Foundation, it was CLF, EPA, and DEP.
Yes, yeah, so fairly high level. There were workshops, and I did, one was a planning workshop, one was scenario planning workshop, another one was regulation, another one was finance. I went to regulation and I went to finance. And the scenario planning was basically where they talked about putting together basically different scenarios that would be a different mix of traditional and non-traditional technologies. We've kind of come through that period for us, but there was a good reason to hold a workshop in that direction. On the regulation businesses, that goes on a little bit higher level. Apparently, right now, there are regulations as to how you plan and review big municipal, regional government projects. And the Cape Cod Commission was pointing out that if they have to go through the existing procedures, it's going to be costly and time-consuming, and it doesn't really need to be done that way. So they were shortening up some of the regulatory routes, and so they talked about those types of things. And the financing was just basically a little bit more about how different towns do their financing, and there is some variety in the procedures that the towns use as to how they raise money and assign costs to different areas. So, well, okay.
There was a fourth one also, right, Charles?
Yeah, community
Forming
education.
consensus. That means us talking to people in town and making sure that they realize how important this work is going forward, so that when it comes to town meeting, they vote for it. That's your job.
Community education. Well, I don't think they made,
All of our jobs.
I'm certain we could all do something individually, but I think they were also talking about a much broader effort. Basically, each WMA taking on responsibility for a very, I guess best described as intensive community education process, and getting it started very early, so that people, not only to let people know what was going on, but basically to elicit what they call feedback, or not necessarily feedback, because it could be initial, elicit ideas also from the community about their thoughts about this. So it wasn't just the idea of presenting to them a formed plan, but rather involving them in the development of the plan going forward. And they had a lot of very specific suggestions about how to go about that and that sort of thing. And they did stress the need for it because, as Mike mentioned, obviously the community ultimately is going to have the say on this because to the extent the town has to put up money in these systems, the town meeting is going to have to approve it. Also, and I checked yesterday and it's still not up, I did ask the staff, because there were a lot of slides during all these presentations, both the general presentations and the workshops. And they said that eventually, I hope not too much longer, all these slides would be posted on their websites. And also, I know they videoed the workshops. So I'm thinking that hopefully, in the not-too-distant future, it'll be possible also to view those workshops. At this, I don't know, just want to take a couple of minutes to look at this. This is something that they were talking about in community education and just generally everybody.
I still have my copy.
You have one?
I still have my
Oh,
copy.
okay.
I picked it up at the conference.
Okay, I assume you have it, Jean.
Oh,
We didn't have, they were urging people to spend some time going through this. If you turn it over, you'll see on the back what it is. It's something they've put together, which you computer folk will no doubt love. It's a typical, I shouldn't say typical, it's a real computer games type of approach, but it's a way of developing a lot of information and learning a lot about what's going on, what's a possibility for your town, if it would just load here. It's called the Black Box Home. They're all, obviously, it's not just related to 208 per se, it's got all sorts of other things in it, but it's got a lot of things in it, including these things at the bottom, the map viewer, community level watershed planning. I'm just going to quickly open this one at the top. And this is a video you can watch how this works, and a brief explanation of what it's about, that you can actually go in here. You can, I did spend some time at the conference back with it. They had a little room, not a little room, a closed off area where they were showing this. You can go in and you can put in your town, you can put in all sorts of different things. In planning scenarios, for example, you could put your town in, you could put in different possibilities for your town, see how they evaluate them. I don't have enough familiarity with this to really be any sort of a guide, but it just sort of, just to give you an idea that it's there. You can go in, you can look at the video tutorial to find how to work your way through it. And I don't know, I was thinking perhaps at some point, maybe after we've all had a chance to look at this somewhat on our own, that we might want to try to do some exercise here at some meeting. I think it's because it's also a way of, as we know, this is broadcast to the town, so it's also a way of people in the town getting familiar with this idea, because it is intended not just for professionals, but actually for community people as well who have an interest and are willing to put in the time to work through this, to get a deeper understanding of what's going on. And it was fun, but unfortunately I haven't had much time since the conference to do anything with it. No.
Yeah. This is, to me, at 73 years old, this is so different from my experience in regional planning development activities. And so I really need to acquaint myself with it. And it does seem that a lot of the process for the planning for what we're doing here with wastewater on the Cape, the professionals up at Cape Cod Commission level, they see it through these tools, you know. So in a way, you have to kind of see the tools to know how they're explaining things, like that, the one that Adele has up now, the MVP, multivariate, I don't know what,
Planner, multivariate planner.
plan, yes.
Planner.
Planner.
Planner. That's the business whereby, using the computer, you can say, okay, what if we took care of all of the wastewater from the houses and businesses in the town only by traditional sewering? Okay, what would it be like? And you can go through and click the right things, and the baseline data for your town is already loaded, and it will come up with the details. And details would be how much nitrate is being taken out for how many dollars, and the dollar range for other things. Then the other thing is, you could say, well, what if we did it half by traditional wastewater treatment, and the other half was using the non-traditional technologies, like we talk about aquaculture and the permeable reactive boundaries and floating constructed wetlands, which all have an ability to take out of some of the nitrate out of the water. And apparently you can play back and forth. You can go back and change your numbers. What if it was 25%, that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Well,
And-
once you go in, you get an ID, and once you've done some scenario or something, it gets saved. You come back the next time, you can either pull that one up and make changes in that, or you can go on and make a different one, so it's not just like doing it and then it's lost. I mean, whatever you have is saved under your ID for you to do further work with if you want, or, further changes. I don't, I suspect, I really, in fact, this came up at the conference. For a person of my age, I guess I'm more used to computers than a lot of other people, because for various reasons, including a friend of my husband's, and Men in Their Toys, we got our first computer at home in 1985. Before there was a web. I remember trying to work through those bulletin boards thinking, what am I doing here? But in any case, so I've been, and then we as soon as they really became usable for the office, we had them in the office also. So, I mean, I feel comfortable with them. Obviously, this is a whole new something that I have to learn in terms of that sort of thing. But the fact of the computer itself doesn't bother me. And I really think it's worthwhile for anyone who's really interested to put in the time to try to learn how to work with this. Because if you think about it, I don't think we could be anywhere near where we are now in the 208 planning, considering where it started. I mean, they really only started this whole process in 2014. I mean, that's when the whole thing started. They started coming up with the updated plan and everything. They finished it within a year, and all of this is moving on in terms of the towns. I don't think that could have all been done without computers. I think it was computers that made it possible to move along at that pace. And so it's going to be an essential part of their continuing work. And I almost think it's incumbent on anybody who wants to be involved with this to get familiar with it. Because that's where it's going to be. That's where the information is going to be. It's not going to come out in any other form.
Adele, let me add a little bit to that and see if, okay, I know that the Cape Cod Commission, with their computer planning skills, they took a computer and they read all of the land across Cape Cod for its potential to create a wastewater situation. And by that I mean, I asked the fellow in that room off to the side at the conference in June, he said, okay, the size of the area read to classify it for whatever it meant in terms of wastewater was 2 meters. So every 2-meter rectangle across all of Cape Cod was read by the computers And basically it said it's permeable, or it's forest, or it's marsh, or it's grassland, or it's lawn beside a house. And in doing so, they then had a baseline from which they could sort of predict the total amount of wastewater that was coming out. And of course, planners in previous years would go to property records, things like that, a 2-bedroom house, a 3-bedroom house, and they would slowly add up the potential for generation. But in the new era, they had the computer read everything, and that's what sits underneath that multivariate planner that it goes to for, what it knows is the baseline, how it's able to do that kind of thing. Now, yep, Jane.
Just to interrupt you, I completely agree that computer models are extremely helpful, and we are able to update land use information. I would, however, particularly for the town of Eastham, caution you to consider that the information that was generated by the Cape Cod Commission, in our opinion, that's the town's opinion, and our consultant's opinion, is an overestimate, because our wastewater loading was based on regional estimates of water use. We are, as we all just spent half an hour talking about, we don't have a municipal water system. And because we don't have a municipal water system, we don't have metered water use. So the estimate that was assigned to Eastham in terms of wastewater values was 50 gallons per household more than what we're using to develop our water system. So as just a common sense thinker, when we were discussing the difference of opinion with the Cape Cod Commission, we suggested that this was an overestimate, and therefore the responsibility assigned to the town of Eastham in shared watersheds is a number higher than the actual value. So some grant funding that I obtained from the Cape Cod Commission is pursuant to working on discussing the allotment of wastewater load with the town of Orleans as we move forward. We will be on the record as having metered water use in the very near future, not on every parcel, but hopefully we can extrapolate. In discussing this with our water consultants, our water engineers, they've cautioned first-year water use information as a target, because apparently water use, they've been in this business, they're all experts and know their trade implicitly, that the numbers shift over time, and that they found that the number actually decreases. I don't understand why, but whatever. So I
People
caution.
learn to turn off their
I
faucets
don't
because
know.
it's not their wells anymore.
I'm not sure why, and maybe
I can tell you why,
it-
because I
it's
keep
total-
telling my husband, get out of that habit.
I'm not quite sure, but, so I caution you to understand that a computer model is a model. We all know that. It's not real. Engineers that are hired by individual towns as having the responsibility to implement plans have to ground truth models. And I just want to point out, and we have been on the record with the Cape Cod Commission, and we've been assured that although we were denied reevaluation for the water use value assigned to us, which was based on the Cape-wide average, which includes the towns of Barnstable, Falmouth, et cetera, rather than a sub-regional estimate, which would be more fair. For instance, the town of Orleans is assigned a lower water use value than we are, considerably. So
Per acre?
No,
it's
Per
per
person.
dwelling, per household.
is it 110 gallons per person?
No, that's wastewater calculation under Title V. This is water use, as in discharged wastewater, real wastewater disposed of. The state code for design of a septic system is highly conservative. It's way over-designed. You
Is
don't
Orleans-
actually use that much water.
Is Orleans numbers based on their municipal water system use?
Yes.
they have a water system. We don't.
Correct, correct.
Another way in which waiting has.
So again, just throwing a little caveat, I'm
Yeah.
certainly not being disingenuous with the work and the information that we get in our, the help we're getting, the assistance we're getting from the Cape Cod Commission. It's just, that's a very important missing piece of factual information that will be forthcoming. It doesn't change a thing about water quality in Nauset Estuary or anywhere else where it's impaired. It's impaired, we need to move forward. I'm all about, any help we can get is great help, but just,
Yeah, and I would assume that, I mean, it's going to be a few years before, I mean, there'll be steps to implementation. There may be some
Absolutely.
implementation in 12 months, and then, but at the same time, we'll be getting water use data. And you have any idea of how long the Cape Cod Commission would take before
well,
they reevaluate?
again, we've discussed this at the director and the deputy director level, and they said straight out that when new information comes forward from towns, it would get updated into the 208 plan. I wanted that up front, but, we're on the record as, we've agreed to disagree, and that's a placeholder. That's okay.
Yeah, let me add a little bit to that. Jeff, we are just at the end of the first year in which we have these organizations called the Waste Management Agency, and Adele represents with others on the town that entity. The 208 planning caused the Cape Cod Commission to make sure that these waste management agencies, and they call them waste management agencies, I've written in watershed management, but that's not exactly correct. They said they wanted a governmental entity with budgeting, financing capability to be responsible for every watershed on the Cape. And they were saying that that's better than what we have now, because what we have is town boundaries that cross watersheds, so we don't have a way of sort of managing the watershed consistent to the needs and uses and problems of that particular watershed. So Adele, I think a little while ago you said we had 4 different watersheds we had to report on?
Five. But I mean, we had to report on all of them. There are really, present purposes, I think, only 2 that, and it's one watershed. But Salt Pond and Town Cove is basically where the action is going to be immediately. Rock Harbor potentially could be, but there's all that stuff about Rock Harbor is still up in the air, and the fact that Rock Harbor is really a boat basin. And that, there's just so much you can achieve in a boat basin. And the others, I think Herring River and Boat Meadow and that are all sort of on a back burner. So it's really Town Cove and Salt Pond. And I just pulled this up. You get some idea of the type of detail you can get on the maps in this planner thing. So I think even if you take it with a grain of salt as to what exactly we ultimately are required to do, we know we're required to do something, and this would be a way to begin to frame in on methods for doing that. What's the result? Obviously the guides are down at the bottom about, what's houses and what's other things and that sort of stuff. So this is what Charles was talking about in terms of their mapping they have done. And the reason that the rest of it is not filled in is you select what kind of map you want. And I selected watersheds. If I'd selected a town map of Eastham, I mean, our part of that watershed would still be in it, but it would show a lot more town detail, like all the roads and that sort of stuff. So it's,
Yeah,
A lot of information here. Could be used actually for a lot of other things too. I remember, I looked at this and I thought, boy, I remember when we were doing the pond brochure, how Roger was looking all over to find some sort of town map that showed all of the ponds in the town, and what a struggle he had finding it. Well, the Cape Cod Commission, if I were to call up the town map, has now given us a map of the town that shows us all the ponds in the town. Because they, they did the whole thing, so they captured every water body.
Where I'm sensing that if you look ahead, say, 3 to 5 years, and you ask the question across the Cape, have we moved forward and improved our wastewater situation, our too much nutrients getting from the land into the ocean? And that through these individual watersheds, you would have that peer pressure of saying, well, we have these watersheds that have all met and moved on and made their plans and have some things being implemented. But on the other hand, we have these other watersheds who haven't, and that would be sort of public peer pressure. We don't have that kind of thing on Cape Cod right now, as far as I know. Ways of being able to kind of compare one place to another and seeing if they're being good citizens and they're spending a reasonable amount of money to control the pollution that they have confronting themselves.
It's also that Commission has established 10 priority areas, which they consider the watersheds that have the most impact on the estuaries. And Town Cove Salt Pond is one of those priority areas. So over the next 12 months, we are going to be getting particular attention from the Commission. And they said that the expectation was at the end of the 12-month period, there would be some steps to some implementation in each of the priority watersheds. They weren't saying any sort of full bore type of thing, but there would be something more than a plan on paper would have taken place in each of the priority watersheds. And, and the point basically of the presentation, it wasn't just CLF, EPA and DEP were saying the same thing. Because the lawsuit obviously shined a spotlight also on DEP and EPA. The lawsuit that was filed was a claim by the Conservation Law Foundation and the Buzzards Bay Coalition that EPA was not doing its job in terms of the plan that is required under the Clean Water Act for different areas. There is supposed to be a plan for monitoring water quality, taking steps, that sort of thing. And the plan for the Cape, and subsequently turned out for many other areas in Massachusetts, was the initial plan that had been developed in 1978. And nothing had been done since then. And so this lawsuit, and it was an interesting legal argument, framed the argument that by inaction, by EPA just routinely letting things go along, and its inaction, it had actually was approving an out-of-date plan. And so that there had to be a new plan, this sort of thing. And the lawsuit survived, I mean, through several motions to dismiss, et cetera, and I think it became clear to everybody concerned that the judge did not think the claim was frivolous and was going to entertain it. And at that point is when the Cape Cod Commission, and I forget, do you remember the term? They created some sort of an area under state law. It began with a D. I don't remember what it was.
DRI,
Yeah.
Development of Regional Impact.
Right. And then through that, developed this 208 plan for the Cape. And at that point, a settlement was reached in the lawsuit in which they agreed that if in fact, or started developing, that if in fact the plan was developed by a certain date and everything, that lawsuit was over. However, the representative of CLF spoke at the 208 conference along with EPA and DEP, and they all made it clear that they did expect that this was not an exercise, that there would be significant action taken as a result of this plan. And that each one of them, in their separate capacities, obviously DEP and EPA, would be monitoring and enforcement of the legislation that they enforce, that they would be prepared to take steps. And CLF indicated that it was continuing to analyze legal claims. They had a second lawsuit, which never got dismissed. It just sort of never went anywhere. It's sort of in abeyance. That Clean Water Act makes a distinction between what are called point sources and non-point sources. Point sources being things like treatment plants and that sort of thing. And they have requirements as to what has to be done with respect to point sources in terms of monitoring wastewater flow to water bodies and the whole panoply of stuff. There's nothing for what are called non-point sources like septic. And as the EPA guy explained at the conference, that's because when the Clean Water Act was enacted in the 70s, it was a response to the issue of all of the pollution of the waters from point sources, like industries that had disposal things and were disposing their chemicals into the water, wastewater, well, like the Boston Harbor situation, wastewater plants that weren't dealing properly with their wastewater disposal. So the focus was on point sources, and that's why the regulations talk to point sources. CLF is trying to develop a theory that the Clean Water Act, properly interpreted, applies to non-point sources as well, which would be our individual septic systems, which obviously would be somewhat over the top if that ever came to be. So anyway, they made it clear that they are continuing to pursue areas, legal theories that might be available to them to produce action if, in fact, the waste management agencies do not act as set out in the 208 plan. So that's sort of in a nutshell where this whole thing sits at this point.
Yeah.
The towns are going forward, obviously. They've all submitted their watershed reports as required. And now we're on in the next phase.
Oh, a lot of detail. Maybe we could shift the subject a little bit here. I was going to tell you that I did go to the Eastham Part-Time Taxpayers, Part-Time Residents Taxpayers Association. They had 2 summer meetings, and I went to the one on Saturday at 9 a.m. It was up here at the Elks Hall, and there were about 160 members there, 100 maybe 90 people overall. The town administrator, the fire chief, Bill O'Shea from the Board of Selectmen were there on the front panel. Sheila gave an excellent review of all of the little situations and reasons as to how things are in Eastham right now. I mean, our town administrator, we're very fortunate, our town administrator has been with us for a number of years, and she has in her head all of the kind of little history and institutional knowledge of different things, and it was really something to listen to her talk about those things. On the back of the agendas that I put out it's a handwritten note, and what I do when I go there, I just set up a table off to the side, and I put out some of our committee pond water protection brochures, but I also had photocopies of 6 different articles that had been in the newspaper in the last 6 months that pretty well recap about where we are on different water issues for this area. And my intent was that I would just use what had already been in the newspaper as a way of allowing the folks that are only here in the summertime to kind of catch up on the issues that are going on. So that piece of paper just kind of goes down through there and identifies the different, the headings on the different articles in the paper, and the TCC is the Cape Codder, and CCT is Cape Cod Times. Basically, those are the two public news agencies that collect all that information. I did have with me there actually is a paper copy of the 208 plan. They're very few, but it was nice that I had been able to pick up one in the past couple of months, and I had it on the table, giving the message to the folks that are just here in the summertime. 208 planning happened. It was a very big event. It's now kind of guiding everything else that's happening. So we had that there. And let's see, I must have talked to maybe 10, 15 people in some detail. I think the fact that I've been there in previous years, folks pretty know the things that I can tell them, so they move on to the other tables as well, because Environmental Partners had a table there. Brian, their professional engineer, was essentially taking questions and answering different things, so that was going on as well. So, let's see. I also wanted to...
I'm going to make one more pitch for computers.
Sure, go ahead.
For those people like me who are drowning in paper, the 208 plan is on the Cape Cod Commission's website, the entire plan. And so you can look at it there. What I also like about looking at it there is, of course, it has a search mechanism. So, for example, if you were to type search for Waste Management Agency or WMA, you can go directly to those sections of the plan that talk about the role of the Waste Management Agency. I just...
That website again, Adele?
It's up on the board there.
You can just Google Cape Cod Commission.
Cape Cod, okay.
It's capecodcommission.org, and then it's /index. But if you do that, or if you do as I do, I just put into Google 208 Plan Cape Cod, and it brought the page up.
A little different topic of Orleans has its Water Quality Advisory Panel, and it's the panel that was able to achieve a consensus in Orleans that then allowed Orleans to go forward and vote to spend money on various wastewater initiatives that they have down there. So the monthly meeting is coming up tomorrow. I do plan to go. I was just going to highlight the things on the agenda, which are sort of it's an update on what they call the non-traditional technologies, and those are the aquaculture, permeable reactive barriers, floating constructional wetlands type of things. And Orleans has an aquaculture pilot going on Lonnie's Pond, which is one of these terminal ponds. Terminal ponds meaning it's a pond surrounded by land, but it's getting saltwater flow into it. They're also going to be talking about going into permeable reactive barriers, and they have two places down in Orleans where they intend to do something. One is right below their landfill, and the other one is more down towards the south end of Town Cove, because they know they have high nitrogen water moving in the groundwater flow going into the Town Cove. And they also had a comment, it's the first time I heard of it, they had, all the professionals have been speaking about permeable reactive barriers as vertical wells going down into the area that has the water quality problems. But apparently they're also starting to talk about a horizontal permeable reactive barrier, which is, understandable. It's just using that direct drilling technology. Let's see, we're going to be talking about their piloting and monitoring. And one of the key things that in their plan is what they call that adaptive management plan. In other words, as you learn new information, you consider it and you revise what you have already made for plans if it does not make sense to keep doing it, to continue to do it the way the original plan said to do it. And well, I know I'm jumping around on presenting things to you a lot, but in the One Cape Summit Conference, one of the handouts was 25 pages or so, and what it addressed was how to preliminary guidance for piloting, monitoring, and evaluating non-traditional water quality improvement technologies on Cape Cod. And what I did is I just copied the table of contents from that document. We're in that period where the professional engineering community is proposing what they call non-traditional technologies. And a lot of these non-technologies, the engineers are saying it's reasonable, but this is one of the first places that they're being used, and we have this guidance now that tells us how we're going to review what we get from results from those activities. And I say, well, this all makes things transparent. You know, you're able to say ahead of time what is the key questions you want to answer, and this is the document that allows the public to read it and see what's going on. So it's not that I thought you all read every chapter here on this document, but I just wanted you to know it does exist, and something like this hasn't existed that you could hold in your hand up to this point. I know about it because I go to the monthly water quality advisory meetings, and I listen to the professionals advise the staff of Orleans and the Board of Selectmen down there and the other environmental groups that make up that panel. I listen to go back and forth. So, you know, I don't see anything more. I know we got to review the minutes. That's one thing we need to do. There's the item in there about Minister Schoolhouse Pond with the stormwater diversion project. That would be something Neil Andres is working on our DPW, but it's summertime, and I think it's more reasonable to see progress being made on that once things quiet down, because that's a busy area for the time being.
Well, I'd also offer to try to take a crack at doing some revising of the notice card, the water results test, to try to get something in there about the 2 milligrams, to try to broaden it out beyond just nitrate contamination, to basically what is my understanding of the principal reason for why we're doing it is to alert people to the above 2 milligrams, meaning the septic infiltration in their water. So I tried a couple, which I'm not ecstatic about any of them, but it's just sort of maybe an idea of a place to begin to sort of look at this. What did we do, print a huge supply of those cards?
Yes. Yep.
I thought that was probably good. Obviously, this is not a fast track, but something. I'm wondering if there's also some way, we did a lot of this during the discussion of adopting a municipal water system, but I think now there's not a lot of conversation anymore about what it means if your reading is above 2, which mine was the last time. And I think this is going to be certainly of some relevance as we move into people's decisions as to whether or not to hook up to the municipal water supply. They're understanding that if they're getting high readings from their well, that means there are some, or higher than 2, I should say, that there's some septic infiltration into their wells, and that one way they can avoid that, obviously, is by replacing their drinking water supply with the town supply rather than relying on their well. So, some ideas. But I realize this is not going to move very quickly because, no doubt, what do we have, about 5,000 of the cards left?
I don't know, I'd have to check.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
suspect, yeah.
You know, we always, when we're
Yeah.
reprinting whatever it is, we always, you know, review it, or, you know, do we want to update? But I honestly have no idea how many cards we have, but I could check and let you know.
Because I think it would be useful to continue to keep this information in the public eye so that they're aware of what these things mean. As I mentioned at the prior meeting, I mean, you know, once we bought the house, we started doing the water testing when we were here in the summer and getting these cards. I thought, well, this is very nice. My number's under 5, so I don't have to concern myself with anything else. And really wasn't until I joined this committee and we started talking about drinking water and the above 2.
We do, you know, just in general, you know, the reason we fully backed the whole intent of the program and developed it the way we
Yeah.
did is, it really is a public education process, and it does generate, the fact that somebody brought the sample back to us is buy-in, that it was important to them to go through some effort, filling it up and returning it to town hall. And a lot of times that generates some questions from the person who's either dropping it off or comes in with a card. So does our educational message reach everyone? No. Does anything you were going to say on a postcard work? I'm not a marketing person. I don't know. We tried to keep it simple and short, and we're certainly willing to think about edits and changes, so that's great. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
No, well, I'm not criticizing the educational effort to date. I don't think anybody's effort is ever perfect. But, you know, it just occurred to me that I sort of pay attention to things, and the significance of this didn't hit me, and that maybe there was some way we could improve it in some way. I don't know if there are other ways, if there's something that we could write that would be available. I mean, I just think we spent a lot of time and effort trying to educate the town as well as we could in, forget now, was this 2014 or 2013, that year that we put on all those various presentations, the Board of Selectmen, and getting people to sort of relate to the significance of having a reading above 2 milligrams per liter was part of the effort, and I would like to see us try to keep that alive so that it still stays in people's consciousness, and this is something that they're thinking about as they go forward. So I don't know if there quite possibly are better ways to do it, but I just happened to pick up my card, and I was reading my card, so that's what led to this.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't think we have, obviously, we don't need to make any decisions today. It was something for people to look at, think about. Other people have ideas about better ways to do it.
Put it on the agenda for next month.
Sure.
See what we've thought of. Yes, I think it's important that we carry through with in some way of getting the information to the public, and there are different ways of doing it. I'm not a good writer in that area, but yes, the town can make sort of a public letter. That would be one way. Or
Town's not big on mass mailings, as we found out with the brochure.
well,
Of course, we are going to have an advantage, but it's baby steps at first. Because once we start mailing out water bills, we have something that will go in the mail that we can add something to. The problem in the past has been that we can't add, because you can't put anything in the tax bills. And that's really, I guess, about the tax bills and that census, and both of those they have to go out independently as they are, as I found out from asking. But now, with the water bills, that'll be a different situation then. So at least for those people who are on the water system, they will not be the prime targets of this, but I just happened to flip
Will
through my
they
mind.
even
They could be prime targets of other things, like the brochures. Maybe finally we can mail out some brochures.
But would the
No,
people,
wastewater information, you're
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason you're probably getting the response you get right now from this is because people are concerned about their drinking water.
Yeah.
As soon as they're on town water, they're gonna lose that interest.
Well, they won't need to test their private well because they
Yeah.
won't have one.
Right, they won't have it either, and yet we'll lose the information on how contaminated ground is getting.
Well, we do still have surveillance programs. You know, we are responsible for testing downgrading in the landfill. Even regardless, when public water is available, there's a surveillance program that's required by Solid Waste Department, DEP, Solid Waste Division. So there will be monitoring wells, and we will have many wells for,
I was wondering,
Many
what
years.
is we have now 5 or 6 phases, including the present one.
I believe
6.
Adele said there's 5 phases?
6.
There was 6, but in other words, you
There's
said
still
5,
gonna-
you mean 5 more.
There were 5 more, yeah,
5
because.
more,
of-
so it hasn't
yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
And when was phase 6 supposed to be done by? Do we have a date
Well,
on that?
it was originally 2-year stages, so I guess the whole thing was gonna take 12 years.
12
And in a way, we're back to that, because going town-wide was approved the year after phase 1. So, my understanding, and I must say I can't point to specifically hearing this, but I guess just the way things are going along, my understanding is that phase 2 would start when we finish phase 1. So they'll be in the same process they would have been in if townwide had been approved the first time around. So it'll still be a 12-year span, unless, who knows, could it be a little bit faster? Because I don't think, probably, because what's happening now is they're only like maybe a month or so ahead, so I don't think that's gonna change the whole 12-year thing.
But the reason we have it spread out like that is so that we don't have to pay for it all at once.
That's right, because of the bonding.
Because it could be done in a much shorter period of time. if we
Well,
wanted to
I mean,
pay
as
for
you
it
can
upfront.
see, the impact from the construction right now,
Yeah.
and the number of contractors that the town of Eastham has employed to do that work, to work on every street
Yeah.
simultaneously would be
Oh, I wasn't
impossible.
suggesting-
So,
yeah, right.
projects are always
Yeah.
phased.
But it's also, as you say, it's also a financial.
Spread out the cost.
Because what you do is, there's a bond at the beginning of each phase, so that spreads it out over a 40-year timeline. The bond, for
Oh, yeah,
example,
so
for
it's-
phase 6, that bond won't be whatever they do with bonding. They won't bond, go out looking for money for that until they're ready to start phase
And
6.
they're 40 years. So in other words, we'd be putting over a 52-year period instead of, say, a 44-year period if we did it in 4 years, instead of 12 years.
Yeah, that makes
Well,
sense.
Yeah, I've heard,
Math is bad.
I've heard a 30-year bond.
There was 30 years originally, and again, I will have to rely on my memory. I think, I know why, because originally we could only get 15-year terms. And so, because it's being bonded under that SRF fund. And in the interim, while, the various times we went back to town, and again, this is my memory and I could be wrong, but my memory is the SRF rules changed and they allowed 20-year bonding. So it went from a 30-year term to a 40-year term.
I think if I'm correct, SRF program for wastewater projects can be bonded out 30 years, whereas the drinking water program is 20.
Yeah.
We tried to get the terms changed, but it took legislation
Yeah,
change.
Yeah, and when we first started, it was only 15.
Yeah, but kind of going back though, even as we get phase 2, phase 3, implemented, it's still going to be important to have some idea of where what is an accurate reading for some of our higher level spots around town.
As I said, we had a very good participation number last year. I just, working off memory here, but I think the number was 1,800 responses, which is huge for nitrate nitrogen, and we, in our analysis. So again, we are getting really good participation, and you are right. As I suggested, it's not a mandatory program across the entire town. There will be areas where there will be mandatory hookups. So we will have wells for decades to come. But I look at it as the field of dreams. You build this water system and, you will have users, and I think, perhaps as a property transfers ownership, you might have a different opinion about which is the preferred water supply, whether it be the well or municipal water. So people will have options, people will have opportunities to hook up if they just installed a new pump, when their new pump dies or such, and whatever. So there's going to be individual circumstances. Nitrate nitrogen isn't the only problem. Minerals, a high iron, corrosive nature of well water, so many reasons that we spent so much time and effort to try to educate people about, but there are a wide variety of reasons why, in my opinion, municipal water would be the preferred option. So we will continue the well testing program. We will continue the educational outreach, which we do, and my staff does a really great job every day of doing. We have hundreds and hundreds of questions every week, so the message is getting out there, and we do it a variety of ways.
So, have we come to the point to review the minutes from last meeting and
Yep.
be drawing to a close?
And thanks again for those of you that are participating in the MEP sampling program, and I hope everything went well. I didn't individually talk with you about.
Ours didn't very well.
Okay, great. Scott is doing 2 sites.
Well, I'm not, yeah.
Well,
Well,
2
one
sites
boat
with a
is-
team.
with a
They have
team,
a
yeah.
team of 4 people. Sandy Bain, Sue.
Susan, my wife.
Susan and your wife are going out from Town Cove, and they're doing 2 of the more southern sample stations. And so, I'm glad it went well. It was absolutely a perfect day.
My interest
And
started.
yeah, and the whole process of the sampling
It's
went
an
well.
18-year-old boat.
But, it's great that you all work together. We have a couple of people that can be floated around, I hope, because you had 4 people, so.
Well, we only had 3. My wife couldn't make
Okay,
it.
okay. So I assume that's going to happen. I know Mike offered to be a fallback. if-
Emergency
if-
call. You call me in the morning at
Emergency.
6.
Adele is
I'll go anywhere you wanna
participating.
go.
Charles, thank you for doing Salt Pond, which is more difficult because you have to take 2 samples at different elevations with the Niskin. So I really do appreciate, your help in this project, and, you're all helping collectively, so I really do appreciate
We
it.
had 2 good things going for us. One was we had Sandy on the team, who was
A
experienced.
veteran, yeah.
And the second thing was, it was very easy to do, go out from the boat and stuff like that. Was no tipping or anything. In fact, Sandy even did all the
Filter.
filtering in the boat, because
Okay.
it's just sitting there.
Which we told you not to do, okay.
No, you didn't tell us not to. You
following the
didn't-
rules.
No.
Best to do it on
No,
land.
it
Thank
didn't
you.
say- It did say, best to do it, that's what was
Best.
said.
But I guess,
Remember, we're
you
sitting
get
there
away
on
with
a
it on
boat
the
that's not
boat.
even rocking, and
Well,
she said,
it's
"Do it."
great, because we have the variety of a motorboat, we have kayakers, Amy.
They shouldn't be doing it.
Amy and Joanna went out in kayaks, and Joanna Buffington and Steve, I've forgotten his last name, went out on a 2-person either a two-person kayak or a canoe. So it was great, and the samples were delivered to the town of Chatham. They are collectively taking all of Pleasant Bay's samples and all of Nauset estuaries. So Orleans delivers their samples, and I actually was going to coordinate with Carolyn to take excess coolers that she couldn't fit in her car, but she was able to fit them all. So we just had the more northern samples here. I logged them in, chain of custody, and then delivered them to Chatham, and the samples all went out earlier than the more modified program in years past, so. I guess, you know,
Great team.
it was really great, and it's a real partnership between multiple towns, so it's a really positive, I think, positive.
Was that Steve Kleinberg?
Right.
Kleinberg?
Kleinberg, right. Yeah, so
Yeah,
he,
you sent us this list.
yeah, Joanna Buffington, so, yeah, so, anyway, okay, thank you.
I move that the minutes that you've sent us here, Bill, be accepted.
Fine.
You don't have Janet to catch my typos?
I know.
We need a second.
I read them, but I
Give a
couldn't.
second.
Oh, I'll second it,
Very
sure,
good.
because I read them already before the meeting.
All right. Any
As far as I could remember.
discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I guess, 6, and six SIPs.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
6 SIP.
What's the date of the next meeting, Charles? I know you put it out all the time. Is it on your
9th of
agenda?
August.
9th of August.